Picture this. Courtroom 23. Silence, so thick you could cut it with a knife. Federal Judge Carl Nichols, a towering figure in his black robes, eyes blazing with barely contained fury. Across from him, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, poised and defiant, her chin held high. What happened next wasn't just a legal confrontation. It was a moment that sent shockwaves through Washington, D.C., and proved why you should never, ever underestimate a Texas lawyer who grew up fighting for justice. Judge Nichols, a man who presided over hundreds of cases, commanded respect from the nation's top attorneys, and never, not once, had anyone dared to challenge his authority in his own courtroom, was about to learn a harsh lesson. He was 55, a former corporate lawyer, appointed by a previous administration, a fortress of judicial conservatism. He was brilliant, yes, but he had one critical weakness: his temper. When challenged, especially by someone he viewed as beneath his station, he could unravel. And then there was Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. At 43, she was a civil rights attorney, a former state legislator, and now one of the most dynamic voices in the House. She wasn't born into privilege. She worked her way through school, often juggling 3 jobs, fighting for dignity in a world that often denied it. She'd spent 15 years representing families who couldn't afford lawyers, winning groundbreaking cases that expanded civil rights and held powerful institutions accountable. What made her truly dangerous to establishment figures like Judge Nichols wasn't just her legal mind. It was her complete fearlessness when facing authority figures who tried to intimidate her. A federal judge having a bad day? For Jasmine Crockett, that was just Tuesday. The tension had been building for 30 minutes. What started as a standard congressional oversight hearing had slowly devolved into a philosophical showdown about the separation of powers. Nichols, from the outset, seemed determined to treat Crockett with condescension. He interrupted her, questioned her expertise, and his tone grew sharper with every precise legal citation she offered. "Congresswoman," Nichols began, his voice dripping disdain, "I'm not here for a constitutional law lecture from a politician." The insult was subtle but clear. He saw her as a mere politician, not the accomplished lawyer she was. But Crockett didn't take the bait. She continued, calmly citing Supreme Court precedents and established constitutional law, methodically dismantling his every argument. With each accurate citation, Nichols grew visibly more agitated, his face flush red. He leaned forward on his bench, his composure visibly cracking. The entire courtroom could feel the electricity, the sense that something was about to explode. And then it happened. Crockett mentioned a specific case involving executive privilege. "Enough!" Judge Nichols roared, his voice echoing through the marble chamber like a thunderclap. The entire courtroom froze. This wasn't just anger. This was pure, uncontrolled rage. "Congresswoman Crockett, I have had enough of your political grandstanding in my courtroom," he thundered, his voice unhinged. "You think because you won an election, you can come in here and lecture me about the law? I have been practicing law since before you were out of high school. I graduated from Harvard Law School when you were probably still learning to read." The personal attacks were unprecedented. He questioned her qualifications, her background, essentially arguing his Ivy League pedigree made him superior. The gallery was stunned into silence. Even seasoned legal reporters had never witnessed a federal judge having such a public meltdown. But all eyes were on Jasmine Crockett. Through this entire extraordinary outburst, she stood perfectly still, her expression calm, composed. She didn't interrupt. She didn't flinch. She simply let Judge Nichols finish, watching him destroy his own credibility with every word. When Nichols finally stopped, breathing heavily, clearly realizing the catastrophic mistake he'd just made, the silence was absolute. "Congresswoman," he finally managed, attempting to regain some semblance of dignity, "do you have anything to say for yourself?" That's when Jasmine Crockett smiled. Not a nervous smile, not a friendly one. It was a smile of someone who had been waiting for exactly this moment. Someone who had prepared for this confrontation and was about to unleash something devastating. "Actually, Your Honor," she said, her voice perfectly calm and controlled, "I do have quite a bit to say." She took a single step forward, pulling papers from a leather folder. Since you've chosen to make this personal, I think the court and the public deserves to know some facts. Nichols's eyes narrowed, but Crockett was just getting started. You mentioned you've been practicing law since before I was out of high school. True, you were admitted to the bar in 1993. I was indeed still in high school, working part-time at a grocery store to help my family. She paused, letting the contrast sink in. But since we're discussing qualifications and competence, let's discuss your record as a federal judge, shall we? The temperature in the room dropped. In your 5 years on the federal bench, you've been reversed by the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals 17 times. Murmurs rippled through the courtroom. Nichols's face went from red to pale. For context, Your Honor, the average reversal rate for federal district judges is approximately 8%. Your reversal rate is nearly double that. She continued, never raising her voice, every word landing like a physical blow. Of those 17 reversals, 12 were for what the appellate court termed clear errors in your application of federal law. 3 were reversed unanimously, with judges noting your fundamental misunderstanding of constitutional principles. Reporters were frantically typing. This was extraordinary.